Hello and welcome to a new video. Today I'm going to try and learn how acrylic markers work. I have never been best friends with markers. I remember hating how streaky they looked and how they made paper soggy. But that was many moons ago when I was a child, and I recently heard that acrylic markers could be layered. So I thought I'd give these ones by Artex another go and try and see if I could figure out how you actually use them and maybe give you a few helpful tips along the way. My name is Fiona Di Pinto. This is Drawings in a Drawer. Welcome if you're new. Let's dive right in. I'm a watercolour artist. I love its transparency and I also love sketching. But sometimes it can be really fun and inspiring to try out something new. I skipped a few pages in my sketchbook, as you might have noticed, because I was worried about the markers bleeding through and ruining my first spread. By the way, they didn't bleed through, even though some of them were pretty wet, and I found myself reaching for a heat tool because just like when I am painting with watercolour, I don't like to have to sit and watch paint dry. I started off with a couple of simple mushrooms because they felt like the safest choice since there's not too much precision work, and I was immediately interested in the coverage that the lighter colours could have over darker ones, which is something you just don't have with watercolour. With these acrylic markers, this was true for some of the colours, especially the white and you will see later on the light blue, while some lighter colours failed to show up as much when layered over darker tones. I fiddled back and forwards a little. At times it felt like I was colouring in and at times it felt more like I was painting. It really depended on how juicy the marker I picked up was. Some were drier than others, and it's definitely with the ones that had more paint in them that I had the most fun. I would advise you to start off with a simple subject if you have never tried these, so you can concentrate more on getting the hang of them and getting used to how they work. These mushrooms were perfect for that purpose. My biggest doubt was, do I use these in sections, almost like a jigsaw or a paint by numbers, where I place the colours next to each other rather than over one another, or do I use them as if I were painting? I was very influenced by my past experience with markers and really felt like these could not layer, just like you could not really layer at all with traditional felt pens. Or do I throw all caution out of the window and just wing it? Of course I was worried I would mess up and then I would not be able to upload this video or have to create a new one, but then I thought you should see the mistakes and the not too perfect experiments as well as the more polished ones. Again, the reason I was so hesitant was that I kept on worrying the paper would rip or peel, and though at times it felt like it would, it didn't at all. This is an art creation sketchbook, so it's not the thickest of papers, but I have to say it held up pretty well, and as I continued working with acrylic markers, I started to grow more confident, and so naturally my next step was to move on to my favourite subject to paint, and that is portraits. And this is definitely where I understood that just like with watercolours, the painting goes through the infamous ugly stage even with acrylic markers. I think even more so than with watercolour. I felt like I was constantly trying to salvage the piece. Admittedly, it also felt like I didn't have much control when it came to precision work, as the nibs of these markers are pretty thick. I'm sure there are others out there shaped more like brushes, which come to a finer tip. In fact, you will see me go in with a black pencil to define the eyes later on. So yes, the ugly stage, it surely showed itself in all its glory in this piece, and in the last one in this video as well, you will see that. But here is the thing, there is much more room for maneuver than there is with watercolour. When a medium is opaque and offers a lot of coverage, of course that makes it easier to go back and fix mistakes or hide them. So if you plan to use these, keep that in mind, that as always you have to push through the ugly stage to see the final result, and you must not give up just because everything looks like a hot mess. Try to approach this with a fun mindset and don't stress too much. I found this medium to be very forgiving. I really suggest you swatch the markers and write down the numbers of the colours you like the most, as I literally ended up limiting myself to a few, and others just felt like they didn't belong in my palette. If I could buy these individually, I think you probably can. I would go for less markers. You don't need all these colours, it really depends on your style. I would have liked some more pastels and muted tones, as the ones that were in here were the ones that I enjoyed the most. As always, less is more, and I found myself backtracking when I used colours that ended up looking too bright. The paintings you create with acrylic markers will have a sheen to them, just like with regular acrylic paints, which is something that I am not used to at all coming from watercolour, and that also means it might be harder to take a nice photograph or a good photograph of your work if that is something you like doing. When it comes to blending, I tried using a wet brush and also my fingertips, and I have to say it worked a little bit, not too much though. Also, be careful, as you will inevitably get the paint on the side of your hand and carry it across the page. So be sure to work from left to right if you are right-handed like me, or the opposite, I guess, if you are left-handed. I hope I got that right. If you don't want smudges on your painting, even though these were quite easy to lift. And of course, if you are interested in joining my amazing international online art community to connect with other artists in live and recorded sketching and painting sessions, check out the links in the description box. Don't be shy. You can also join our Facebook group to get a taste of what we do. It really is a fun and special place to be, and I am super grateful for all the wonderful people I have met over there. After having more fun with a mushroom and admittedly being quite impressed by the result I got with that portrait, after thinking it was almost fit for the trash can during the mid stages of the process, I moved out of my comfort zone completely and attempted to paint a sort of woodland. I really never paint landscapes. I would love to, I love them, but I find them really hard. And as I mentioned earlier, this is where I encountered the ugliest of the ugly phases and really thought it was going to look, well, horrible, to put it simply. But again, thanks to the fact that I was able to layer, the final result ended up not looking too bad at all. The two colours that saved me were the white and the light blue, which really offer so much coverage, and also using the darker colours to sort of frame the leaves so that they stood out more and looked like they were more in the foreground, giving this little piece more three-dimensionality and depth. It really just is a matter of sticking at it, trusting the process, and keep layering in the most playful manner possible. I will leave you to watch how this little painting unfolded and how the pretty flowers I had in the foreground in the end really tied the whole piece together. I will also say goodbye. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know in the comments if you have tried acrylic markers yourself and what you think. I always like knowing what you have to say. I will see you next Sunday. Bye for now.